This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. It's been almost a year since Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to the United States Supreme Court by one of the slimmest margins in American history. His confirmation hearing took place during the backdrop of the Me Too movement and saw waves of protesters who wanted to show support for the women who came forward to tell their stories of sexual assault at the hands of Brett Kavanaugh. One you may remember better than the other, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Her powerful testimony will remain a vivid part of American history for years to come. However, another woman came forward with allegations of her own, Deborah Ramirez. New reporting from the New York Times illustrates how her allegations were corroborated, but ignored in favor of a political system which propped up and elevated an entitled liar to one of the most powerful institutions in our country, the Supreme Court. Now, this new reporting appeared in the opinion section for some odd reason, despite the article being adapted for a forthcoming book entitled The Education of Brett Kavanaugh, an Investigation, by two Times reporters named Robin Pogrebin and Kate Kelly. They covered the confirmation hearings and also spent 10 months investigating the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. 10 months of investigative reporting and the opinion section. The focus on the article was Deborah Ramirez and her account of what happened during a dorm party at Yale when she was a student there with Brett Kavanaugh. She remembered being at a party where students were drinking heavily when Brett Kavanaugh, quote, thrust his penis in her face, prompting her to swat it away and inadvertently touch it. Brett Kavanaugh denied this accusation during his confirmation hearing, as well as the accusation from Dr. Ford. While Dr. Ford's allegation received more press coverage at the time of the confirmation hearing, according to the New York Times reporting, both stories were found to be credible. But while we found Dr. Ford's allegations credible during a 10-month investigation, Ms. Ramirez's story could be more fully corroborated. During his Senate testimony, Mr. Kavanaugh said that if the incident Ms. Ramirez described had occurred, it would have been the talk of campus. Our reporting suggests that it was. Did you hear that? Our reporting suggests that it was. It was the talk of campus. It doesn't stop there, though. At least 7 people, including Ms. Ramirez's mother, heard about the Yale incident long before Mr. Kavanaugh was a federal judge. 2 of those people were classmates who learned of it just days after the party occurred, suggesting that it was discussed among students at the time. Unfortunately, Deborah Ramirez was never asked to testify during the confirmation hearing. She did, though, through her legal team, contact the FBI with her own list of 25 individuals who she believed could provide corroborating evidence. According to this new reporting, but the Bureau, in its supplemental background investigation, interviewed none of them. Though we learned many of these potential witnesses tried in vain to reach out to the FBI on their own. 2 FBI agents interviewed Ms. Ramirez, telling her that they found her credible, but the Republican-controlled Senate had imposed strict limits on the investigation. We have to wait to get authorization to do anything else. Bill Pittard, one of Ms. Ramirez's lawyers, recalled the agent saying, "It was almost a little apologetic." So there was roadblock after roadblock. Deborah Ramirez was not asked to testify, and when she attempted to provide useful information to the FBI to corroborate her claims, she was dismissed. None of this, though, is necessarily surprising, but it is still enraging. The world witnessed a woman come forward and share her story of sexual abuse by Brett Kavanaugh, and the walls of power moved in to isolate and protect him. A man of lifelong wealth, entitlement, and privilege. What makes this story even more devastating is the additional reporting that reveals a new allegation and a previously unreported story from another classmate of Brett Kavanaugh that echoes Deborah Ramirez's story. A classmate, Max Steyer, saw Mr. Kavanaugh with his pants down at a different drunken dorm party where friends pushed his penis into the hand of a fellow student. Mr. Steyer, who runs a nonprofit organization in Washington, notified senators and FBI about this account, but the FBI did not investigate, and Mr. Steyer has declined to discuss it publicly. We corroborated the story with two officials who have communicated with Mr. Steyer. He notified the FBI and senators before the confirmation hearing, and they did not investigate. Now, first, this article was in the opinion section of the New York Times. Not only that, but the title of this article, Brett Kavanaugh fit in with the privileged kids, she did not. You have to read several paragraphs to even get to the corroborating information about Deborah Ramirez's account and this new allegation. Talk about burying the lead. Then, New York Times Opinion decides to tweet the story with this horrifying teaser. Having a penis thrust in your face at a drunken dorm party may seem like harmless fun, but when Brett Kavanaugh did it to her, Deborah Ramirez says it confirmed that she didn't belong at Yale in the first place. What? Sexual assault? Harmless fun? Come on. Who wrote that? Who thought that was a good idea to send out? Have we learned nothing? The New York Times has since deleted the tweet, but it is a firm reminder of the obstacles placed in survivors' way to silence them and to protect predators in positions of privilege. Brett Kavanaugh did not sit for an interview with the New York Times to discuss this new reporting because they could not agree on terms. One has to wonder what the benefit would be here if he was to sit with for an interview. He has and will continue to deny the allegations against him, despite corroborating evidence that is piling up. He has and will continue to lie under oath, and not just about the Devil's Triangle being a drinking game and not a reference to a sex position, or that Beach Week Ralph Club was referencing his weak stomach and not his penchant for binge drinking, or that the countless references to Renata alumni in his yearbook were a reflection of respect and friendship and not a reflection of his disrespect for women, and that woman in particular. Why will he continue to lie, you ask? Well, because he can, and because he is supported in his efforts to do so, with Republicans already taking to social media to defend him and denounce this reporting, including the President of the United States. Brett Kavanaugh had the opportunity to admit that he struggled with binge drinking and acted in ways that he's ashamed of, but he didn't. He chose to lie under oath, to defend himself, to huff and puff his way to power. So where does that leave us, other than with a liar and sexual abuser of women on the Supreme Court? Well, Democratic presidential candidates are joining the call for impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh. So far, we have Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, and Julian Castro. It remains to be seen whether this will go further, but it should. Brett Kavanaugh is the poster child for privilege. He's lived a life of privilege, a life of being propped up as special and unique because of that privilege, a life that shielded him from consequence and propelled him toward where he was destined to go. But we cannot and should not elevate these people to positions of power. It is important that Brett Kavanaugh receive consequences for his behavior, and what better consequence than to have this entitled abuser of women removed from his positions in the halls of power?